it is a global issue that we do not have enough housing. The underproduction of housing that happened 30 and 40 years ago, from when interest rates were really high, from the financial crisis that happened in 2008, even the slowdown of development with the pandemic, we're feeling all of that now.
Last I read, the nation was short 3 million units. In this episode of Developing Now, I'm joined by Wendy Paul, Executive Director of a leading apartment owners association in a thriving city. And we get into what really happens at the intersection of real estate, policy, and community. Wendy shares her path into real estate through public service, how development decisions actually get made, and why access to clear information is one of the biggest challenges facing property owners and builders today. We talk about housing supply, policy decisions that sound good but have real consequences, and why building all types of housing matters more than people realize. If you care about real estate development or the future of housing in cities across the country, this is a conversation you'll want to hear. How did you get into real estate?
That is a great question.
Why real estate?
Why real estate? So
you weren't always in real estate, right?
I was not. The first half of my career, I was in hospitality, working at corporate conference centers for the division of a food service company, and just got to go to different places. And at the time, a lot of corporate conference centers were popping up internally. So being exposed to like different places, not only in New Jersey, but I got to travel in different parts of the country, from Manhattan across the river to Manhattan, Kansas. That was kind of cool. But then when I started to pivot away from working at in the hospitality industry, the last conference center I worked at was at community college here in Hudson County, and then went to New Jersey City University. At the time, one of the roles that I had, I worked in the president's office, and there was a major project where the 22 acres of the university was being remediated. It was a brownfield, and the long-term plan was to create housing and other commercial businesses that were going to be there. So one of my tasks was to go to community groups and talk about what the development was going to be, what was going to be included, the benefits that were going to come with it, from the jobs that it was generating, a supermarket that I believe is still in the works to actually happening, but the actual housing in an area of Jersey City that didn't exist.
Now, was the university building this, or was it in partnership with a developer?
It was in partnership. So university and other organizations that can't take advantage of some of the programs. A university, for example, is tax exempt, but there were opportunities to get other funding to benefit from the partners that they were working with. So the builders, 3 different builders, each building about 150 units, were able to get funding or other financial incentives to go vertical on the land that NJCU owned. NJCU did long-term leases. They were able to get the incentive, and that's how they were able to build. So for, I think it was at least 40 or 50 years, the land just sat empty, and over 10 years of remediation. Now when you drive by there, this area that was just fenced off and cleared up, now there's actually economic development, there's housing, an area where you can pass through, and the other buildings in the area are looking better. And for the campus, no matter what transition that's going to happen from one university to the other, it has improved that area.
And what was your involvement?
My involvement was really communicating the information to the community groups and also bringing the information back to the university. So if someone had questions, the number one question that would come up was traffic. What was going to happen with the traffic? Well, the benefit of the development coming was not only streets were paved, but traffic signals, stop signs were going to be included. A traffic study has to be done in advance. And it's a huge investment, at least $1 million for every block that is going in for a development of that size. And the taxpayers shouldn't have to bear the burden of all of those costs. But when a development comes in, that also lends to the benefit to have that infrastructure to be put in place, not just for the development, but for the community in itself.
So is that where like you sparked your interest in getting involved in real estate?
It sparked my interest, and a lot of what I was doing before personally, any volunteer organization, especially with neighborhood groups. I was very involved at the time with a couple of different neighborhood groups, or volunteering has always been something that I've done from grammar school. And you had different opportunities where the principal, God rest her soul, Sister Roberta, would have different volunteers doing things, and you kind of keep doing that. And fast forward to my adult life, it's like, wait a minute, neighborhood groups, I already have relationships with them. Sure, I'll go and speak with them. And turning on, putting on a different hat and talking to them about it, I think that's where I saw the connection of being able to use my knowledge of the topic, and in this case it was development, and also my relationships with the neighborhood groups to say, hey, what do you think about this, or let me tell you about this, instead of just a talking head and having no connection.
Right.
So I think a lot of the networking also helped, and it's just a personal passion to go out and speak to people about things and get information that will hopefully benefit someone or a community for the long term.
So today you are the executive director of the Jersey City Apartment Owners Association.
I am.
JCAOA. Mm-hmm. How did you get from working at the university to this position where you are today?
In short, there was a push to create an advocacy group to be focused on the efforts as it relates to building in Jersey City. I was approached to consider this opportunity that would be advocating for builders and development in Jersey City, not only for large organizations, but anyone who owned from a two-family home to multiple campuses. My involvement, in addition to working on NJCU and that portion of the project, I also worked on some local campaigns, which exposed me to different things that was happening in the community. And it was a natural connection, I think, having connections in the community and knowledge about how some of the things happen in municipal government. And I also had just completed my master's in public administration, so that all coming together made for the right transition for this inaugural organization, if you can say. And the board was formed, and I was asked to consider the opportunity, and I was excited and jumped at the chance. And I think the organization at the time, there hasn't been any advocacy directly related to Jersey City as it relates to the information getting out there, and it being an organization not acting as a hammer, but trying to work together with the administration and continuing the partnerships, relationships with City Hall to continue to have the conversation.
Did somebody make the introduction?
Jeremy Farrell, he, God rest his soul, he was with the Newport LaPrac organization at the time, and the board was formed. And that was the introduction to that. And a lot of the information that formed the organization, and loosely based on other advocacy groups for apartment associations, such as New Jersey Apartment Association, Real Estate Board of New York, even California Apartment Association, were models that we looked at to have that focus, hyper-focused on Jersey City. And I think a lot of the success still stems from him, as well as the board, as the organization operates today.
So you and I worked together at
We
at
do.
the Jersey City Apartment Owners Association.
Yes, thank you, El Presidente.
And I'm the president.
Yes, you are.
And I mean, I like to think I know all of the things that go on.
I like
all
to
the
think that you
time,
know all of the
right?
things because I call you with all of the things.
And sometimes I forget all the things that go on because I have my own business that I run at the same time.
Multiple hats.
So let's brainstorm a little bit on the issues that we try to solve at
Yes.
the JCAOA. As executive director and president here today, what are some of the issues that we're trying to solve for property owners, developers, people that are involved with real estate?
I think part of it is the dissemination of information. What does that mean? You are busy. You are an owner. You're dealing with your employees, inspections, and everything else that has to go in between. Maybe there's a delay that's happening, or you're doing a ribbon cutting. In the middle of that, no fault to the administration and to council members and any other policymakers that are in the city, they're also busy, also making sure that their policies that they're going to present goes to different departments, whether it's a community meeting, planning board, law department, so on and so forth. You as a builder, while you're in between building your projects, a policy may come through that is going to completely affect you in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of years. Your performance already done, and how is this information getting out there? I think being able to have the conversation with the administration or being at the council meetings to get the information when something is introduced, saying, heads up, this is coming. Because by the time that a policy is adopted, whether it includes a safety feature, which safety is paramount. So if there is an ordinance that is going to require you to have an inspection on a facade and you don't know about that, that's an expense that could be a wallop to your budget, especially if you've done that. But it's a non-negotiable for safety. However, if there's something that a policy maker is proposing to say that this is going to help the community, but it's really a superficial policy that's going to suggest to communities that it's going to drop rent prices or something else, then there's confusion. You as a builder don't have time to constantly have to go out there and combat information or receive information at the rate that it's coming in. Sometimes it's a fire hose of information. Having JCAOA as one of the organizations to get information to builders like yourself lessens the burden of how much you yourself have to disseminate to your staff or even your tenants, and it frees you up to be able to network with other builders or even serve as the president of an advocacy group, so you're not parsing through a council meeting that's 3.5 hours long to hear the ordinances and resolutions that are going to affect you.
And wouldn't you say that some of those, or I should say probably most of those policymakers are not in our business of real estate, and because they're not in that business and they don't understand exactly how our business works, isn't it rather dangerous how some policies are made without knowing the information that we have?
Dangerous is a good word, or murky. I'll add that also.
Because at the end of the day, wouldn't you say that if they don't know the business and they don't know the ramifications that occur when these policies are passed, they are essentially using the public as guinea pigs to create certain things that could have certain effects?
Yeah, and I think from a policymaker perspective, there are certain things that policymakers, their hands, I don't want to say necessarily tied, but they are following the letter of the law. And we understand that to a certain extent. But then it comes to the point of, have you considered the impact of X? And just seeing it from a different way and presenting the viewpoint, not just from the builder, but from the trickle down and the trickle out effect of how it will ultimately affect a tenant, where rising costs of rent or rising costs of going vertical. A tenant is not going to see that a policy that makes it even longer to get to the approval process, how that is actually impacting what the final rent is going to be. Because if you've waited for weeks, if not months, because a policy change now requires you to do 3 additional steps, which again could be warranted, but some of those policies, to say to a policymaker, let's think about how this is going to affect, can we look at a different way of looking at it? And I think some of those conversations have been beneficial, and it gets capped before it goes to the public, and the public are guinea pigs, and they hear the sound bites or the clips that make them think, okay, this is going to happen and this is going to be a change, when in fact it could be the opposite. And then there's other wins. We can find small wins to stay out of dangerous territory.
Yeah, there could be those sound bites that you're talking about. There could be things that get passed that could really have a negative impact on tenants. It sounds good on camera or during a campaign, right?
Oh, and
like for example, we're going to freeze rent control or something like that, right? Without thinking about what effect that's going to have on the landlord's ability to make improvements if they're needed.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think that we speak about with members as well as members of the community is you want a project that reinvests in their property, because once a property goes up, there's maintenance that's going to happen. And I use an example of a dishwasher, right? If a dishwasher malfunctions, that's something that has to be replaced. You take out the dishwasher and it turns out that there may be another plumbing issue that has to be fixed. The benefit of that, again, bring it back to economic development, great. Another dishwasher is purchased, preferably from a local merchant, use a local plumber, wonderful. But that's still an expense that the owner has to absorb. And those are the responsibilities. That's what you take on. That's the risk that you take on as a property owner. But you don't want a building to go into your area that they're not reinvesting in maintaining the property, whether it's the common area or if there's some type of gym that's in the building. You want that reinvestment to stay in the building, because reinvesting in the building is reinvesting in your tenants, reinvesting in your tenants, reinvesting in the community. Reinvesting in the community is going to have your community members supporting the local businesses. The local businesses are able to be sustained because people are keeping their dollars in the community. And ultimately, buildings are not just a physical nature. It's building community and keeping people happy, keeping people invested in their own home and their community so they can stay where they want to live, and having the owners reinvest in the people who are living in the buildings and continuing to live there and be members, extended members of the community.
So the JCAOA's job is really to connect or create a bridge between that community, the tenants, the landlords and developers, and the politicians, so that they can all understand each other.
Yes.
And create policies that are fair and balanced, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely. I think the community meeting that we had on Monday, this past week, earlier this week, it already seemed.
That was a great event.
I mean,
yeah, it was fun.
20 people.
Yep.
Invited to come to a meeting, and no fancy presentation. There was no project to discuss. If anything, instead of...
That took away the tension.
Oh, my goodness, right? Wow.
It's funny. I went in there thinking like, because I'm so used to meeting these communities when I have to propose a project.
And they're already ready
and they're just out with the pitchforks.
They're ready to go.
They're ready to go, right? And here we are this time. We're like, hey, we just want to share our information, tell you a little bit about ourselves, talk about your challenges, how can we work together. Totally different mood.
I think the first couple of minutes, if you noticed, okay, I just want to tell you about who I am and tell you about the board president. And I asked a couple of leading questions of you, you answered them, and like, okay, ask us some questions. At first it was like, all right, they're going to tell us something else. They're going to just drop it. Really, we have nothing that we're here to talk to you about. There's no development project coming. There's no initiative. We're here to answer your questions. After the first question, then the hands started like, and I think the biggest takeaway for me from that, from the meeting was some of the information, and not everyone's going to know I'm learning some of the things every day with some of the policies, whether it's on the state level or local level, but being able to clear up some of the misinformation, sharing the information that we have, and also offering to be a resource. One of the attendees has emailed me a couple of times some of the other projects that are happening or things that she's had questions about. And many of the people that were in the room are people that I think we both know. And in that different environment, it's a different conversation. And I think the benefit of getting more people involved, which we're going to continue our tour.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I know. And just bringing more people along. And again, I want to share the information. And I think that we were both saying to, one of the questions was, how can I use my property to make the additions or changes that are going to benefit me?
I almost felt like that question when they were asking, should I add to my house, the accessory
The ADUs.
use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I almost felt like it was a test to see, like, what's this developer going to say? Does he want me making money? Does he want me to improve on my property, or does he just want me to leave? But I encouraged it.
Absolutely.
I was like, go figure out how to get that unit on top of your building or in the backyard. And I just gave him a warning. Do your numbers. Be careful that you are hiring the right people. Get a few estimates so that you don't get screwed, right, in the long term. But I encourage it. I think that if people want to stay in their neighborhoods, they have to learn how to improve their own buildings, maybe even come together with other people in the community.
Yes.
And learn how to develop themselves. That's not rocket science, right? I started as a small-time house flipper.
Oh, they were so surprised when you were talking about the smaller buildings.
I mean, I started with nothing, right? The first house flip that I did, I cashed out a $5,000 credit card, put some cash in my pocket, and I started that one house, right? And then today, now I'm building mid-rise buildings. So I think everybody can take that journey.
Absolutely.
So people who are upset about getting pushed out of their communities, they don't need to be, because they can really learn how this business works.
Yes. And I'll even take it one step further. You even offered, okay, if this is what you're going to do, you can do the numbers, see how it checks out. Mm-hmm. And if you have any other questions, reach out. And I think that's, information is part of the barrier to entry. And we talked about some of the other challenges that are happening that are beyond our control. Several years ago, having 0% interest rate, beautiful. It was a beautiful thing. Those days are gone, or at least they're not going to be coming back anytime soon. Fortunately, we're not in a position like in the 80s where interest rates were double digits. So even at 6-7% interest rate, and right now it's stabilized, if there's an interest rate cut that's going to happen before the end of the year, we'll see that. But even now, the consideration for even buying a new faucet, or you're going to do a kitchen renovation with tariffs or other labor costs that are going up, sure, you're going to have to account for maybe 20% of a cost that didn't exist a year or two ago. However, you're reinvesting in the property that you currently own. And like the group that was there, most of the attendees, except for maybe 2, I think we said out of the 20, right, were all owners, we're all property owners, and they are paying directly into the tax base. They're reinvesting in their properties, or at least considering how they could reinvest in their properties. And I think the other part too is this is where working directly with the city, the master plan is encouraging everything from ADUs to not only be a revenue generator for your home, but also for the homes that have property within their home, like a basement, to be able to do the improvements, or at least have the consideration for improvements if you're thinking about using your garage or your basement apartment as a dwelling that could generate income. Here are the requirements, as opposed to you can't do this. The city is actually encouraging, if you're going to do it, this is how you do it. And then for organizations like ours and other neighborhood groups to get the information, and then it could be, for consideration. And we're all facing the same challenges. Property taxes are going way up, and being able to break down, it's not just the city, it's not just the county, it's not just the school board, even though those are the 3 major components that are driving it up, but how can some of those things be mitigated? Some of it can, and it's a wallop when we see it, but we know that there are other factors outside of the property taxes that are going to continue to drive up costs, and policies should be able to at least cushion the blow where we can, and I think a large part of that is the information.
The ADU, for those who don't know, what does that stand for?
ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. An accessory dwelling unit can be considered an extension of a home. It could be a converted garage. Maybe you don't have a car, but you have a garage in a 2-family home, and you want to build that out as a studio, and that becomes a rental property, even if it's a single-family home, and then that becomes the second unit. It could be a basement apartment. And there are some apartments that are technically, considered illegal if you're looking at the definition from something like the Rent Leveling Board. But they're probably up to code, or, here are the requirements that you could use that accessory dwelling unit or the detached unit as another dwelling, as another apartment that's on site. Benefits of that, it also called a mother-in-law suite. There are a lot of students right now that are getting ready to graduate from high school, going to college. Maybe they're going to be commuting and they could stay at home but still have some independence. Or someone who has just recently retired and they want to stay in the in the area where they are, and they can still be there and have their independence. Right now, the average age, I think it's 74 or 77. I'll have to confirm that. But if you think about someone who's in their mid-70s that is in a walkability situation, right? And they can be around here, and transportation, which in the perfect worlds, we continue to get better with having more transportation options. It gives everyone more independence. I use my dad as an example, 86 years old, and in the same family home that we grew up in, we're all on different floors, and Mr. Paul's out and about, but he really values his independence, being able to be in his own unit and being able to walk to the store and do other things and having the things that are nearby. And when you invest in a property and you can continue to age in place and have the conveniences around you, that's where reinvesting in your property with ADUs or other benefits, that is what makes it makes owning property, again, 2-family home or a larger building. That's the community that also is a benefit.
And is there, in this city, are there any restrictions on how much you can rent those for? Does it have to be affordable, or is it just market rate.
So if it's 4 units or less, the owners can charge and increase the rent to what the owner feels. If it's more than, and owner occupied, that's a stipulation. So if you are living in the building, living in the property in one of the 4 units, right? That's also a disadvantage. But 4 units or less, there's more flexibility in how much you can rent, and a large part of Jersey City are actually smaller properties. Now, if it's 5 properties or more, then you are subject to how much you can increase the rent and rent control. And there are benefits. There's also some disadvantages of having rent control, because when you are purchasing that property, you are responsible for that property. Number one, the bank is always going to get their money, some shape, way, or form. And if once you purchase the property and things happen, again, whether it's a dishwasher or something happens with a tenant, the amount that you can increase is also something you have to consider for the long term of how much money that you're collecting, and you don't want to become insolvent. However, the benefits of having rent control is to discourage the bad actors that also make the rest of the builders and property owners look bad, where just raising the rent, not reinvesting in their property, resulting in a diminishment of services, which then also discourages tenants to stay in the building and so on. So that's part of the benefits and disadvantages.
Yeah. Now these ADUs I think they're happening in other parts of the country.
Yes.
I hear it happening in California and some other states. Where I live in Western Jersey. So this is why I think if anybody's considering having an ADU, they should really check with their local zoning laws.
Yes.
Because where I live in Western Jersey, if you build an ADU, it has to be an affordable unit.
Interesting.
It has to be affordable housing. And there's a certain number of ADUs that are allowed in the entire town. Oh. So once it reaches a cap, I think in my place it's 5 units.
Okay.
Something like that. Then that's it. So for those who are thinking about it, they should really check with their zoning officials and see, if they're capped out yet in the town before hiring the architect and all that good stuff. So.
And I think a large part of the encouragement to use existing property to build out units, not just in Jersey City, it is a global issue that we do not have enough housing. The underproduction of housing that happened 30 and 40 years ago, again, from when interest rates were really high, from the financial crisis that happened in 2008, to even the slowdown of development with the pandemic, we're feeling all of that now. And yes, there are people who are looking to move to places like Jersey City, so they are closer to work. The hour-and-a-half long commute, if they're working in the financial area of Jersey City, of Newport, not wanting to have those longer commutes. Yes, that's a benefit to have a shorter commute, but we need housing.
Oh, yeah.
We need housing. Not even yesterday, right? Like 10 years ago.
I mean, last I read, the nation was short 3 million units, right? And right now it's 2025, so it was about 3 million units the last time I read it. And I can only imagine what that means here in this urban setting, how many units we are behind. So not to have the amount of supply that's needed to absorb the demand, that's really what's driving up pricing.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think it was the Regional Planning Association's report that said, at minimum, we're short 29,000 units. And Right now, there's not that much land to be found to build. And good, bad, or indifferent, we need to have more units on the parcel of land. And from a sustainability factor, you can go higher, have more units, as opposed to a couple of parcels that are cobbled together to only go up a few stories. Yes, there you can look at it both sides to see, there's another tall building that's going to get in the way and it's going to, have more people. But to have a parcel of land that only has a couple of units is not going to add to the inventory that is so desperately needed for people to be able to stay and live in the areas. And when a new building goes up, that 30 years, the commitment of that 30 years, same way that there's a mortgage for a home to mortgage and a bank payment to a building, you're committing to recouping all of the costs that it took to build and have that building. So in 30 years, when that building is then subject to rent control, we're thinking of the industry, what it looks like 30 years out. And right now, if we're already almost 30,000 units behind, and we're just getting to building, going vertical and having these buildings, we're adding to the supply, but we're still behind because we're living longer. People are working from home. Many buildings weren't built for people to be working from home for 8 to 10 hours and then living for another 8 to 10 hours, in their home. So making those improvements, again, comes back to the reinvestment and doing the things to keep people in the community. So we are not having a constant change in tenants. But if we think of the history of Jersey City, where people are coming here through the golden doors and, the whole lore of coming here, you're coming here to either create new roots or continue to have generations of people living here.
Yeah, and everybody's story is different. Why
Yes.
they come to places like here, where we are in Jersey City,
So many good stories.
across from Manhattan. But everybody's coming from different social, economic levels, let's say, right? And I think it's important to note that it doesn't matter what type of housing you build, you have to build all types of housing.
Yes.
And we were having this conversation at that community meeting because, some people were saying, why don't we build more affordable housing? Why don't we build this type of housing, right? It's important to build all types of housing because people who do have the means of paying a certain amount of money, let's call it, a high cost of living, if those units are not there and available for them, then they start to venture into the communities where rent is cheap and start taking away the affordable units that were naturally affordable, right? So now they start migrating because, you hear that all the time. Like, why are people coming to our neighborhood?
Oh, yeah, that question. Yeah.
Knocking on our door, asking to buy our house or occupying our unit. And the answer was, well, that's why it's important to have all types of housing being built. So,
Yes.
We have to make sure we're not getting in the way of luxury housing as well, because those people will find a way to get to the other types of housing
Yes.
and start taking away that inventory.
Right.
So as we're building, I think it's important to have a balance, building all types of housing all over the neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Right.
And with that same question, I think the conversation talking about how the funding sources come together, partnerships that come in, partners that are all coming together for a particular development, other financial incentives, whether it is in the form of financial incentive that's coming directly from the city or the state. There are different programs with the city and the state that can allow builders to apply for to offset the cost of also building affordable within the buildings. And I think one of the longer part of the conversation with the neighborhood group was affordable units have to look the same as regular units.
Yeah, I was shocked that like they didn't know all the details of affordable housing, right?
And that's the part that comes back to the information, right? Where how things were done before, where housing was a separate building or a separate floor, kind of like, okay, let's not talk about it. We're just going to build the bare basics.
Separate entrance.
We're not doing the separate entrance. You can't do the separate entrance. And everything has to be the same. And the person that might be living next door to you, yes, they've qualified to live in that building, but there's no scarlet letter, so to speak, to identify you to be someone different. The reason that the programs exist for a tenant to apply, a tenant, their family, is because that is a need. And the newer developments, if they have 15%, 20% of the building, so out of 100 units, 20 of those units are affordable. And it has to be a mix, and it's sprinkled throughout the building. So the same view, the same amenities that are made available to the building, it's to all tenants. And even though programs and ordinances like the inclusionary zoning to require X amount of units to be affordable, from just the mathematical perspective, it does not pencil if 20 of your units are going to be affordable, fine, but then that cost has to get absorbed in some shape, way, or form. And yes, it may look like the builder, oh, they're just taking the money. Well, those units are not coming in at market rate. So how can the other numbers work out? And that's where it has to come in the form of programs that are coming from the state, whether it's the EDA, other programs with Housing Mortgage Finance Agency, or the city, or the local municipality, to work with builders to say, okay, well, we need to also include affordable housing, workforce housing, other type of housing, to make that available and also have a sustainable project.
With the interest rates where they are today, with the construction costs where they are today, it's already difficult enough to make the numbers work, even if you're getting the land for free. That's what developers are saying in 2025. So it's already difficult. So adding affordable housing to it makes it even more impossible. So, when you hear the rhetoric out there of saying, hey, we're going to make them build affordable housing, the reality is that they don't have to build, right? They can leave a city like Jersey City or Manhattan and go start looking in other areas like the southern states.
Absolutely.
Houston, Miami, and you're starting to see that, right? So it's important for people to understand that if the numbers are not working on a normal building, to start introducing affordable housing, we have to get the incentives to make those numbers work, just like you're saying.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the municipalities throughout the country that are trying their best to reduce the red tape, so to speak, and to make it easier to build. I think that's really important. The sooner that going through a process, because even just going to get your project on a planning board agenda, if you are going for a variance or something else, it takes time. And the project before your agenda item might take hours, and that's okay to get all the questions answered and getting the information out, but time is ticking where it's taking longer to get those done. But I also think, to your point of even if you're getting the land for free, which those days are so long gone, right? In addition to that, I think from the community meeting where, again, most of the attendees were all property owners. And I said, when you look at your next tax bill, look at your property taxes, but look at the land cost. The land cost is the most expensive part of any project. That's before a shovel goes in the ground. And then you as a builder, you're required to pay into the municipality's utilities, right, to increase the delivery of water, delivery of, or the maintenance of sewer and everything else. So at least $2,000 just for the infrastructure. Again, cities
Per unit.
Per unit. Thank you.
Per unit.
It's minimum $2,000 per unit. And in a city that is older, one of the oldest cities in the United States from 1820, if you think about the infrastructure that was made then, and over the years, the improvements have been made, but some of the improvements were connected to older sewage or pipes, right? It was connected to older pipes. And we're starting to see the effects of that, from climate change to just aging cast iron. For many of the homes, I'll use the row houses, brick and brownstones that have a lot of cast iron pipes. I am certain that a lot of the property owners right now, I've had that experience myself, where you have to replace that cast iron pipe. So if that's just in a home, imagine what's underneath the roads that we're going through. And that's where we see the water main breaks. That's where we see when a new development is going into an area, they're not just, that $2,000 per unit is not just for that building. The road is being opened up and also improvements are going in. So the inconvenience of having a building, getting the new infrastructure from the water lines to the new traffic signal, ultimately will have a long-term benefit for all of the community, because it's not if there's going to be a water main break. It's going to happen for an older infrastructure, but it's about getting ahead of it, mitigating that risk that they already know that's going to happen. And every time the road gets open, it's okay, we can't just fix this water main break. It's connected to a whole area. So that has to be fixed. So it's, again, going vertical and going below, trying to fix the issues now before other problems come.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people don't know all the details that go into these projects and how long these things take. You just mentioned that it goes on for a few years, right?
At least. Right. And even if a neighboring municipality is mitigating storm damage, we're still seeing the effects of Superstorm Sandy and other related hurricanes, weather patterns. You have a deluge of 2 hours of rain and the literal trickle down that's going to affect the community. Just even, when water's coming down and, it could be we're about to hit fall, when the leaves start to come down and the grates are full of leaves, then that trickles out and has a flood. There's just all of these variables that could happen. But the sooner that we can get ahead of the maintenance to reduce those chances of happening, it's going to still happen.
Sure.
And no one's thinking that a building's going to go up and that's going to fix everything and nothing, is going to happen. And I think any builder going into it, the rosy colored glasses, like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I've put in the right protocols that it's going to reduce things. Anything can happen, but that's the risk that you plan for.
It all looks pretty when the building is all said and done,
but and that ribbon cutting.
But no one knows what goes into it, right? Right now it's 2025. Mm-hmm. We're ready to break ground on a project.
Ooh.
And I looked at my emails and I said, when is the first time I spoke to that property owner about the possibility of purchasing it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I looked and it was 2019. 6 years went by, and we went through, negotiations, coming to the right price, talking to the city, community events, getting the approvals, the site plans, right? And then COVID hit, right? We went through COVID, and we went through poor economic times, interest rates fluctuating, right? In the meantime, what are we doing? Paying taxes, paying interest rates, right? 6 years went by. We haven't even put a shovel in the ground yet, right? So here we are today, shovel goes in the ground, and now we're talking another 2 years to get the building done, and then we have to fill it up. We have to get the tenants in. So it could be a 7-year or 8-year endeavor, sometimes more, depending on which state you're in, right? I hear projects in California are taking like 15 years to build.
Yes.
For an 8-unit building. So it's wild.
I think one of the things that came up in the community meeting was, yes, it seems that there's suddenly all these buildings that are going up. That project probably started at least 6 years ago. Some projects it started 10, 20 years ago. There's one of our members that started a project 30 years ago.
Right.
30 years ago, and just going in the ground in 2025.
But when the city created the Journal Square 2060 redevelopment plan, right? That's a redevelopment plan within this urban area. When I first saw that in 2020, when I first saw that in the year 2000, and it said redevelopment plan 2060, I was like, oh, it's really far away, right?
Wow,
And we're in 2025, and now the buildings are popping up 25 years later. Just to give you like perspective on how long the process takes to develop an area, right?
And to that same area was before I got into this role, and I was just learning about redevelopment plans and amending redevelopment plans. One of the neighborhood groups had unearthed a dormant redevelopment plan to allow commercial to be in a particular area. That was my introduction to redevelopment plans, and that was probably 2010, maybe even a little bit sooner. And that's where I first heard about the 2060 plan. And I was working in the same area. So I'm watching some of the changes that were happening and then being able to literally pinpoint it on a map of what part was actually changing. And again, seems so far away, but now even thinking about it 15 years later that we're seeing this. But these are all conversations that we're starting 20 years ago. And it was actually passed in and around 2000, which means that the conversations were even happening before. So even if I'm speaking to someone, and I'm sure that you are too, when you're traveling and you're seeing the construction and let me look up the redevelopment plan. And I encourage a lot of people to look up the planning department, their zoning department, or just seeing what's happening in their community, and especially looking at the projects that are on the planning board. And I think that also came up in the community meeting, this is where you can find the information on where and what projects are coming up, because the approvals might be in, but you get your project approved doesn't mean that you're automatically going into the ground that next day. And that those are, again, the carrying costs that are not considered. But even if, again, you're going to rebuild or redo your kitchen right now, which is one of my favorite projects ever, it still takes time. Even ordering the fancy faucet or waiting to have something else custom built, like cabinets, even if you're buying them off of the shelf, you still have to work through the installation and everything else. Doing that for 8 units, 800 units.
There's so many moving parts.
So many moving parts.
So many little tiny pieces, hundreds of thousands of pieces that go into one little building.
And the 2 columns, so to speak, of what you described, of starting in 2019 and all of these other external factors, you have to be ready for those external factors. And it's not for the weary, but it is for the curious. And that same curiosity whether it's an ADU or 8 units or more. That's again, getting the information, being armed with these are the variables that you can face, but it can be done. And I think just converting that curiosity in converting it, and I keep bringing it back to economic development, that's how we keep our communities going, and the involvement. So policies don't get passed that is just going to discourage that curiosity, discourage that development, discourage people staying in their communities. I truly believe and advocate for builders as yourself, or builders as yourself who are then working with other property owners to replicate that same success. The more that we could replicate that same success and support, it comes from both sides, we will be, instead of more fractured, it will be more of a cohesive progress.
One of the questions that I keep thinking about that came up at that community meeting was, are developers, I mean, the question was for me, right? You remember this question. She said, are developers responsible for making taxes go up?
Oh,
you remember that
man. Wow.
That was, I got a question for the developer.
And
here.
I think I helped mitigate that by saying, Ben, you want to take this one? Okay, I'm gonna just let you take that question. No, I think that we did a good tag team on that one.
I was, there was a former politician in the room, so yes. I was hesitant to say, hey, perhaps it's the inefficiencies of government that are making taxes go up. But what was your take on that?
I mean, I think you could have said the answer that you wanted to say, and maybe we can even talk about it even now.
Let's answer it now.
What would have been your extended answer if there was
my real answer?
Yeah,
the real answer.
Don't worry, no one's recording this. It's
sure,
just us.
Of course. The real answer is, well, first of all, here where we are, for the past 20 years, mm-hmm. since I got here, mm-hmm. taxes haven't increased as fast as they should have, right? As fast as inflation was increasing. And part of that is because every time there's an election, mm-hmm. the politicians are very scared to increase taxes because they're afraid of what their constituents are going to say or how they're going to be voted for, right? So they try to keep things, status quo, don't disturb anything. And that's one thing, right? And now as a result, we're at the point where they just can't keep up with the expenses because they haven't increased as much as they should, right? At the same time, the area has been changing, right? Because of many factors. One is that Manhattan is not building as much as it used to. And a lot of those people who live in Manhattan or want to live in Manhattan are pouring into Jersey City, and it's changing the median income range in this particular city.
Yeah.
And therefore, the state has decided to pull funds from the education department in Jersey City. Mm-hmm. And that created a hole in the budget, right? And now all of a sudden, they have to start taxing the city to make up for that gap, right? So you have the education component, you have the lack of increasing taxes over the years,
yep.
as much as they should have. Mm-hmm. And that happened all at the same time. And so here we are today, we're seeing taxes go from maybe 40% to like 50% increases in some states or in some buildings, right? I hear stories of, I was building a building on 2nd Street mm-hmm. nearby. Mm-hmm. And there was a lady there. She came out. She was very upset, because I'm like, the big bad developer. Everybody's blaming developers for increasing the taxes, right? So, and she complained. She said, I don't know what to do. I have to possibly sell my house, move out. I've been here my whole life with my husband. He's a veteran, blah, 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 right? And her property taxes went from $9,000 per year to $18,000, doubled.
Overnight.
And she was very upset about it. And I had to give her the whole lesson on why that is. And she had no idea about the education, about the lack of increasing taxes as fast as they should have, right? She had no idea.
Right.
And I think that it's up to people like us, our organizations, our profession to start educating people and explaining to them why these taxes are going up.
And we are in a city where about 70% are renters. So the renters see their rent increasing, but you're not getting a quarterly letter that's giving you the updates on what the tax rate is. The information is publicly available, but are you immediately looking up the tax record for the property that you are renting? No. But for that same resident who's receiving that tax increase bill to double, it's a shock. And that shock, the trickle-out effect of that is the renter, if it's a two-family home, they need to also mitigate that and passing that cost along to the tenant.
So here's what we do,
Tell me.
right? A little tip for the landlords
Yes.
is we keep our tenants informed of the tax policies in Jersey City.
Interesting. How do you do that? Do you like
Just
email them?
by writing
or-
to them.
Yeah.
By writing to them every year when they are renewing their leases.
Yeah.
If we have to increase the rents,
Yeah.
we explain to them what is happening with the costs of running the building. So we don't just say, hey, we're increasing your rent by 4% this year
Have a nice day. Bye.
or 5% or whatever
Right,
it is, right?
right. These are the
We give them
contributing
the breakdown of what has been going on with the cost of maintaining the property and the policies that are occurring in the township, right? Because, like you say, they have no idea,
Right.
right? So if our property taxes increase or the costs increase with the municipal fees and whatever the city's throwing at us, right? We're going to break that down for the tenant. We're going to let them know because at the end of the day, they live here, they vote here,
Yep.
and we need to make them understand how those policies at the end of it are affecting their rents.
Yes.
So that when they are considering turning the lever on the booths, right, they have that information that is valuable to them, right? And we give them the resources too. Is say, hey, you don't believe us? Here are the links.
Yes.
Here's the story. Here's the article, right? And that puts the tenant on our side.
And I think that's wonderful because I think one of the overlooked community are renters in the sense of renters are taxpayers too.
Absolutely.
When I say about the tax bill coming, you don't have to be a property owner to know that costs are going up. You don't have to be a property owner to know that your rent is increasing because of some of the other factors. And bringing it back to your point of the taxes not going up, the city had to invest city dollars, whether it was in the form of bonding or other municipal loans or something else, to keep up with the infrastructure and the aging infrastructure. And investing in those portions, or when there was a water main break and having to put out the money for that, if the taxes were gradually increased, that would help mitigate that. But to have that wallop from $9,000 to $18,000, and I'm sure, and I know of property owners that have seen it triple even to that, that's causing the disruption that that's affecting the area. But the information and getting the information to people, I think, are so important. And to that same owner, that stopped you as well. There are programs that are also available to property owners. Again, back to the information, whether taxes and what the rate is if you are a veteran, if you are a senior. Senior freeze is very important, especially for people who are still here, to help freeze the taxes to a certain rate. But the more that is being built allows for programs such as that to stabilize their tax requirement that they're paying as a property owner, but also allowing for other projects to come in and make up for that difference as well. And taxing of properties, it's also a very complicated base, because it is important, and I think that's awesome to share tenants. Which, by the way, how is it received? Do people ask questions? Do they want to talk about it more? Do they request more information?
Sometimes they want to talk about it. Sometimes it turns into a phone call. What does that mean for me? What does the future look like? So, look, we believe that a tenant doesn't have to be a partner on the LLC that owns the property to be treated like a partner, right?
Yes.
At the end of the day, tenants are partners.
Tenants are partners.
Because they are part of the transaction. They're paying their share of the building, and their rent is going towards the mortgage and the expenses and all that good stuff, right? So why not share as much information as you can to the tenant and make them feel like partners, so that they are part of the transaction, right? They feel like they are well informed and they understand why the costs are going up, right? So I think it's important for landlords to get that information out there,
right?
Whether it's taxes or just, the cost of municipal fees, whatever it is, right?
Yes.
So when the increases do come, they're not shocked. Yes. They're not like, oh my God, my rent went up 5%, 6%. Well, if you kept the information, if you read all the information that we given you, you've noticed that our taxes went up by 30%. So the 5% increase is not bad compared to the 30% increase in taxes that went up on the property, or the challenges of interest rates.
Yes.
Right? What does that mean? That means that if we need to make capital improvements on the building, it's going to cost us more to borrow the money to make the capital improvements, and therefore we have to somehow absorb all those costs, right?
Capital improvements on top of your required inspections. If you have a lift or an elevator in your building, you're required to do that inspection, and all of those other requirements, plus that capital improvement, so important. So
Sure.
important. And for me, speaking about builders, again, like yourself, is saying these other things have to also be paid for, and assessing some risk in some shape, way, or form that might interrupt that, but it doesn't give you a pass on the requirement. You still have to do those things,
Right.
which nothing here is, at no cost.
Absolutely. So it's like any other industry. When you go to the supermarket and you're seeing rising costs, whatever they are, right? You're seeing the price of eggs and the milk is going up and all these things, right? When you go to the store and you're experiencing these crazy prices, you're kind of informed, right? Because you are watching the news, you are seeing what's going on with tariffs.
Yes.
Or the cost of fuel, the cost of taxes, the cost of doing things, right? Inflation, all this stuff. And as a consumer, you just absorb the hit because you're informed, right? So when you get to the register and your grocery bill is another 50% more than it was a few months ago,
Yeah.
you're like, it's already in your head. You're like, okay, well, tariffs, fuel, inflation, blah, 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 blah. You're like, okay, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So the same thing needs to be done with the tenants.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Developers, landlords, need to really share their challenges with the tenants and let them know, hey, these are the things that are going on. So at the end, when they are getting that increase at the end of the year, the tenant's like, well, it is what it is.
Right. Right.
The landlord just got hit with 40% tax increase, municipal waste fees and that fee and the other fee and blah, blah, blah. And they're understanding
Right.
what that is, because if they don't get that information and they get the increase, it's just going to look like greedy landlord
Yep.
is jacking up my rent to put more money in their pocket. That's it. That's the way it's going to translate.
And ironically, I think the broad brush of greed is painted across municipalities and the electeds as it is on development, when in fact there isn't this like a conspiracy of, yes, I'm going to put this building in, I'm going to cost you a lot of money. And again, the misinformation of how your tax versus your property and your units are taxed differently than another one. Taxing is a very complicated and layered area, but getting the information out there and having people understand where this property is taxed at this amount and they're being taxed on their income versus being taxed on the land cost, having knowledge about how owners are also required to submit information annually for that assessment. And if you are able to buy land, if there's any land that's even left, as soon as your land is for a proposed project of that 200 units or 20 units or 8 units, you start paying the taxes on that property as if the structure is already there, not when it's fully leased up. And that's another part for people to consider, that if it takes 6, 7, 10 years for the building to be occupied, you have been paying the tax assessment and the rising tax assessment even before a shovel goes into the ground.
Absolutely.
That's just another layer to think about.
Yeah, so information is key. I think the more information that we can get out to tenants or just people that are buying condos, right? And having them understand what this entire process means for a developer, for a landlord, they're going to begin to understand why things cost what they cost, right?
And even some other part, like some of the thoughtful amenities and sustainable approaches, whether it's having open space on a rooftop, collecting water to then take care of the greenscaping and any landscaping that's happening throughout the building. And those environmental factors and considerations of having tenants be or a development going closer to transportation, taking those things into consideration of making it easier for building and development to go. And if a building is not near transportation, having that ride that's going from point A to point B to add that convenience. Those are some of the thoughts too, and the intangibles that you may not see from the outside, but those are incentives that are built in. And I think, the word luxury has immediately, draws up some ire with some people, but the amenities are in the building to encourage people to be able to have those conveniences without having to always get back in the car and go somewhere, right? Whether it's one less trip having to drive to or walk to the gym, you have that within your building. It's also a time saver to allow you to do the other things with your family, with small children, being able to invest, whether it's lockers to receive a delivery of a package or a staff member at the desk to receive those items and have that convenience that you don't have to think about, I think are also very important, and some of the intangibles that sometimes people don't see that you are also an employer to keep people not only in the buildings, but also employing people who are working directly with you. So that's what gets me so excited about this sometimes.
And then there's the cost of the employees,
Yes,
right? That
yes.
we haven't even addressed yet, right? So when there are local policies that are affecting the cost of the employees in your building,
Yes.
whether it's the super or the maintenance guy or the plumber or whatever it is, or let's just say there's a payroll tax increase that we've seen recently, right?
Oh, yeah.
Again, just that little piece of information, getting that out to your tenants. Like, hey, you're a local politician, just passed this law that affects all of the employees that you see on Christmas, who's picking up the packages for you. And, the guy Fred down the hall, that guy, we now have to pay him an additional X amount to go to the local taxes for whatever reason. That's increasing the cost of the building. And we want to let you know now because that could affect your rent
Yes.
in about 10 months from now.
Right.
Because somebody's going to have to absorb all that
Yes.
stuff, right? So when they see the bill at the end of it, they're not in shock.
And it's having the employee at a competitive salary and the benefits and all the other investments. And I don't think that there's a single builder or owner that's saying, I don't want that person to have benefits. That's not going to happen. But when you're providing the benefits to your employees, and then that becomes a challenge when there are other policies that, are forcing you to do something else that is making it challenging to have that competitive salary, to have those competitive benefits. And then on top of that, for growing families, you have a great tenant. A great tenant might decide to move out because they want to go to a municipality that has a better school system, a municipality that has better transportation options, other services that should be made available to people who live in the area. But then the reason why you were losing your great tenant is not because you didn't have enough options in your building or in the commercial space downstairs from your building. It's for the external factors. And when you think about that property tax going up to threefold, and you've done everything, you've repainted your common areas quarterly, you have like the best staff, and the person says, really love living here, but I'm going to go because I want to go to a different school system. I'm doing what's best for my child. That is a challenge. And that's also part of where you mentioned the increase in taxes. It is a business. It is a commitment. It is a covenant that people are entering. I'm going to buy this property. I'm going to reinvest here. And I am saying, yes, I'm going to pay this assessment on my property to contribute to the property, but I should be able to have the best education for my family to be made available. And even the school system is one of the largest employers in municipalities. And if they're not receiving the services, and that's just at the bare minimum, the school system should be better. And as a property owner, you're saying, I'm committed to making sure that happens. But when you are losing tenants, and that's where a lot of that transition comes from, is it's the external factor. You can have every amenity available to your tenant, even if it's open space that's available to all members of the community. When someone's leaving from something that's beyond your control, even though you're paying into it, that also causes more challenges, because now you have an empty unit. Now you have to market that unit. If you're lucky enough to get the same unit rented within a few weeks or a month, that's still 1 month that you're not receiving rent. So again, trickle down and trickle out.
Absolutely.
Issues that affect you.
Yeah, but this is all great information that I believe people really need to understand. about the world of real estate development. And,
Let's take our world tour. Let's go on a world tour and talk about this. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that, like I said, conversations like this are very important. People have to understand this business. And if they don't understand the business, we're always going to be looked at the bad guys in the room.
Yes.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Let's do this again.
Doing this. There's going to be a lot more conversations because as we're doing the JCOA tour,
we're going to go on
We're
tour.
going to learn some more about what people are thinking, and we're going to continue to share their thoughts and their anger or whatever it is, right? So,
yeah. And their ideas. And I credit you to being an open book and saying, ask me. And,
absolutely.
you know, ask the builder, ask the developer, ask the person who's recently done this. Ask the builder, how can I replicate that success? So really credit you to making yourself available to the questions or the commentary. And if we can, you know, get more information out there and you speaking from the experience, I think that we'll be really able to make changes.
I've always wondered why people were so upset at our profession, right? When I started my business, I was just this guy flipping houses on a historic block in Jersey City.
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? What is he doing here? Why is he cleaning up the neighborhood? What's going on, right? Yeah. And I always wondered why. Like, why are people so upset? I'm here trying to, you know, just fixing up a house, making a living, creating more housing, or, you know, getting rid of an unsafe environment, making it safer for the next person or family to come in. So this is something that's been like bothering me really for many, many years. And it's gotten worse over the years. So at some point when this is going on, you're like, enough is enough. I think people really need to know what's really going on with this business, how it works, so they can start looking at us differently, like all the other professions in the world, like the farmer and the doctor and I was going to say lawyer, but I don't know if I want to use that one.
Yeah, we'll put them to the side for now.
Okay. What else is there? The cook.
Yeah.
The restaurant owner, right?
Yeah, let's use food as an example, right? The more information that's out there, you know, recipes, cooking methods, everything else, it makes, you know, I'm going to try that. That's good information to know. If you're watching a celebrity chef or watching someone in their kitchen make something, you're going to be like, how do you do that?
Right. It's becoming a culture. Like people want to cook at home.
Yes.
Right.
And the more information's out there, and I think that for the longest time, the information was shrouded. Like it was in plain sight. If you went to a council meeting, if you went to a planning board meeting, if you even knew that that's where some of this information is, and just starting having that conversation, getting the information out there, and realizing that it does take time. This is not just a flash in the pan, pun intended, that you're just gonna, you know, whip something up and, you know, and serve it. No, this is a commitment. It's a slow cooker, but when you take the information and you're another pun. But when you take all that information and you're able to share it, like a meal, another pun, if you're able to share it, I think that's where some of it's like, oh, this is how it happens, good, bad, or indifferent. I think the more information out there and answering the questions that people have, I think that we're just, you know, going to be able to change it one block at a time.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the video or drop a quick comment or question. I'd love to hear what stood out to you most. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, a quick rating or review goes a long way to reach more people who care about these kinds of conversations. And of course, hit subscribe wherever you're watching or listening so you don't miss what's coming next. See you on the next episode.